Hey Finxters, today I'm going to run through a few examples that show you how to return a JSON object from a function in Python. So first, a quick bit about JSON. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a data format that's widely used, especially for transmitting data to and from web applications. So let's just dive right into a few examples to start working with it. One of the most common, or one of the libraries used for working with JSON data is the JSON library in Python. In this example, I'm going to show you how to use the JSON.dumps method. Now, what this does is it takes Python data objects like lists and dictionaries and converts them or serializes them into a JSON string. All right, so let's run through this little code snippet. First, we're going to import the JSON library. Next, we're going to define our dictionary. I've defined a dictionary of greetings. We've got Spanish, English, and French here. And now you see we're going to call the JSON.dumps method, pass in our greetings dictionary, and out pops a JSON string. And let's print the result. Okay, so you can see that our result here kind of looks like a Python dictionary, but this is actually a string. If I ran this in the Python console, you can see that our JSON string variable is actually a string object. So that's what JSON dumps is doing. Let's take a look at our next example. We're going to do pretty much the same thing, except instead of defining a Python dictionary, we're going to define a list. Here I've got a list of some of my favorite foods. You cannot forget poppy seed muffins if you're writing a list of my favorite foods. Again, we're going to use the JSON.dumps method to convert or to serialize our favorite foods list into a JSON string. All right, so once again, now we've got all our favorite foods into a string. You can see that these brackets are actually characters within our string. Okay, so why might we want to do this? Well, one reason for serializing Python objects like dictionaries and lists is so that we can write them to a JSON file. So let's look at that in example 3. Again, we'll import the JSON library. I'm going to define a dictionary again. I'm going with some greetings, but now I'm going to show you that within this dictionary, I can include lists as part of my values in the key value pairs, and I can also include another dictionary. And the JSON dumps method can handle this just like Python. Okay, so let's see what happens. All right, we ran it, we defined our dictionary, passed it through JSON dumps, and out came, once again, a string that represents our Python data objects, dictionaries, and lists in the JSON string format. Okay, so I promised you we'd print something like this to a file. We're actually going to do that in the next example. All right, let's jump into example 4. In this example, I'm going to show you how to write this JSON string to a file. Once again, import the JSON library, define a dictionary, use the JSON dumps method to serialize that dictionary. Okay, and now I'm going to use, I'm going to open up myfile.json, and then I'm going to use file.write to send my JSON string to that file. So let's run this. Okay, and actually one thing I'm going to note here. You'll notice that if we use the indent option in the JSON.dumps method, it actually adds new line characters and tabs to make this much more readable. And you'll see that that shows up in the myfile.json. So let's take a look at that. All right. So here we go. We got new line characters and indents to make that much more readable. You'll see if we remove the indent option here, boom, our JSON string goes back to being one line, and it's not nearly as readable. So this is a nice little feature, or a nice little option. And now I'm going to show you that there are some Python data types that cannot be handled by JSON.dumps. So let's define my function here. And this will be very simple. We'll just return it. Okay, let's see. So can we serialize a function? And this is going to return an error that says object of type function is not JSON serializable. So functions, classes, and other complex data types cannot be serialized by the JSON.dumps method. However, there are other libraries that can handle that with a little more advanced activity, but that's outside the scope of this video. All right, let's move on to example 5. In this example, we're going to start interacting with web applications. We're going to use the Flask module here. I'm importing from the Flask module the Flask class and the JSONify method. I'll just walk you through briefly how the code works. First, we're defining an instance of the class Flask called app. Here we're going to use a decorator to make sure that whenever someone navigates to the books section of our web app, we use this return JSON method, or we call this return JSON function, I should say. It's outside the scope of this video to describe exactly how decorators work, but just know that when using the Flask library, they're used extensively. All this function is going to do is define a dictionary that we're going to print to our web page, or that we're going to return when a GET response is received by our web app. I'm also printing a couple things to the console to illustrate a point here. And note that we are using the JSONify method. We're passing the dictionary into the JSONify method, and that's what we're returning. Okay, so let's run the code, and then we'll talk a little bit more. So here we go. You see that it's running this Flask instance, or this Flask app on our local computer here. So I'm going to navigate here. Okay, not found. Nothing happens here. But if I navigate to books, you'll see that we get our dictionary returned. And now I'll also show you these print statements. So, okay, if I just print out my dict, you see here, we get the dictionary here. Now, what if I use the JSONify method? You see that the JSONify method actually returns a response object. Okay, so now it's kind of funny. When returning a dictionary, you don't actually need to do this. I'll show you that now. So let's stop this, run it again, go for it, navigate to books, and there it is. So we still get our dictionary returned here. However, what if we tried to do that with a list? And hello. Okay, let's try returning that. Stop and run. Okay, we'll go back. Navigate to books. Oh, internal server error. Okay, so the Flask module was updated to correctly return the contents of Python dictionaries. However, that's not the case if you're trying to return a list. In that scenario, you will have to use, or other data types, if that's what you need to do. In that scenario, you will have to use the JSONify method. Try this again. Run. Okay, let's see. And see, now we get our list returned here. Okay. So again, we used Flask to define a little web app that was running off of our computer, and we converted a dictionary of some interesting books that I like into a JSON response object, or a Flask response object that gets displayed when that page is accessed. Okay, so let's move on to our final example, example 6. In this example, we're actually going to be interacting with a web page in the opposite way. Instead of creating one, we're going to be receiving information. So this one's kind of interesting. If we go to this web page, this is actually a cool little web app that tracks all the people in space right now. So if I go here and I click this link, it returns all the names of the folks in space and which spacecraft they're on. So we've got some folks on the International Space Station and some on Shenzhou 15. I hope I pronounced that correctly. All right. Now, what if we need to know that, every 10 minutes or something? Good thing we have, we're able to interact with that API. Okay, so to do that, we're going to use the JSON library and the request library. First, we're going to make a GET request to the web app that I just showed you. Okay, we're going to use the requests.request method to do that. Here's the syntax. Okay, that gives us a response. In a minute, I'll show you. It's actually a response object. Okay, here we're saying that if we get a response, we're going to use the JSON method of that response object to JSONify it, or to serialize it into a JSON string. And then I'm going to write that to a file. And I'm going to use the JSON.dumps method to do so. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, so here my little print statement is showing you that JSON content is, and then I wrote it to the file. Let's check it out. Astros.json. Yep, and here it is. Okay, so now let's play with that a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go over to the console to do this. Okay, run. So let's take a look at what response is. Response is actually a response object. Note that, let's see, response. If we use the JSON method, it actually returns a dictionary. Okay, that's why we were able to print this out here. And then you can actually pass, let's see, what if we try to pass our response directly into the JSON.dumps method? That's not going to work, okay? So that's why first we convert our response, or from our response we output a dictionary using the response.json method. We pass that into JSON.dumps, and that allows us to write the JSON string, the resulting JSON string, to a file, which we then indent nicely. So we can actually read all these nice names of astronauts that are in space working in our space station right now. All right, those are all the examples I have for you today. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening.